what you know. So
Yeah. What that is understanding the overall concept will help you answer some of the questions about the minutia. If you understand how a house is constructed, how the roof is constructed, the layers of the roof, it's easier to answer what's the gap between sheathing. You know it's not 5, 6 inches because you understand the overall concept of how the roof is constructed. Concepts are easier to understand. They're easier to grab hold to. That's why I say in class, don't worry about trying to write every single thing down that I'm saying. Look to try to understand the concept of the system as a whole. And then as you go along, you can start to add in the minutia, the measurements, the this, the every single word, the language, the vocabulary, all of that kind of stuff. If you get the concept down, it will make it a lot easier for you. All right, so interior. This is our next system. Make sure that you read the interior chapter along with there's a chapter on kitchen appliances. Okay? So make sure that there are questions that show up from the kitchen appliance, something about there's one about a microwave, there's one about about the dishwasher, high loop, I think something that shows up. So make sure you don't skip. And again, these are easier sections because these are the sections that we are familiar with. So you want to make sure that you lock these points in. Okay. So as a part of the interior system, we're going to be covering the surfaces. So your walls, ceilings, floors, doors, windows, the main visible finishes of the interior of the home, including your interior steps. In your kitchen, we're going to be covering the countertops and also the cabinets. Okay. So, this is a lot of times for the interior is where the cosmetic defects come into play. You will often find cosmetic issues on the interior that affect the appearance but not the functionality. Paint chips, nail pops, small cracking, staining, different things like that. Okay? Again, those are technically out of scope, but at times you still may feel the need to um document it. Okay. The other thing is about appliances. Inspectors, there's a lot of different opinions on whether or not people include appliances in their inspection. I do not. In my opinion, appliances are personal property. As such, they are outside the scope of the inspection. There are some inspectors who will test the stove, who will test, the refrigerator, all that kind of stuff. I personally don't do that. So that will be something that again you will have to, based upon your state's SOPs, you will have to make a decision on whether or not you are going to include those in your inspection. As a general rule of thumb, again, this is where our representative number of windows and doors come in terms of what we have to inspect. The material on the floor, the wall, and the ceiling is something that you should inspect. Any stairs, stairways, the railings, the guards, handrails, all of that kind of stuff you would want to uh, inspect as a part of your SOP. So, beginning with our walls. Okay, so most of the walls, drywall is the most common interior finish for our walls and our ceilings in newer homes. You may hear it called sheetrock, which is a brand name, so it's technically not correct, but you hear people refer to it as sheetrock. You hear people refer to it as plasterboard, gypsum board. All of that is referring to uh drywall. It's basically that gypsum material, and is that material is basically sandwiched between two sheets of paper that are obviously stronger than just regular paper, but that's essentially what drywall is. They come in sheets, just like how you see here in this picture. Typically they're going to be about 4 feet wide, and then you can get them in different lengths from about 8 feet to like 15, 20 feet long. Okay, so they're gonna be 4 feet wide and then in different lengths, starting at 8 feet. You can also get them with different thickness. So a 1/2 inch drywall is what is most common for your walls. So when you look at the walls in the interior of your house, there that is most likely 1/2 inch drywall. Now for our if you're looking for a heavier drywall that's fire rated for your ceilings, garage, and different things like that, then you can get it where it is 5/8 of an inch. And again, in terms of thickness, there's also what we call green board, which is a moisture resistant drywall that is often used in the bathroom. If you were to rip your shower out, you would likely have green board behind your shower tub, the tile, or your tub surround is what you would see. So in terms of installation, you basically you have to prep, obviously, and then you're going to cut and hang your drywall. So you have to be you got to be really tight with your measurements so that your sheets of drywall will fit. It's almost like putting a puzzle together. You want to have as few seams. This right here is a seam. You want to have as few seams as possible. So you cut your drywall so it will fit. You hang it first, and then you screw it or fasten it into the vertical structural members of the wall, which are called. That's correct. So the drywall is fastened into your vertical studs. Okay. After that, we do what's called taping. So this is what he's doing right here. So you apply what they call mud or joint compound to the seams. So where the sheets of drywall meet, those are seams. You mud them and then you add a layer of tape, not regular tape, but drywall tape over those seams. Okay. And then you skim or sand. This is just basically where you are trying to get everything smoothed out so that you can paint the wall and it will be smooth. Okay? So you cut and hang your drywall, you fasten it, you tape, you skim, you sand, and then you are ready for your paint. Now, keep in mind, if you go into some houses and you see those textured ceilings, you can create texture on the wall or on the ceiling if you want to do that with your joint compound or whatever. If you are in a home that is older than about the 70s, then there's a good possibility that that texture, that popcorn ceiling, would likely contain what? Asbestos. That's correct. Okay. Um, Commonly, so when you go into a room, as far as your defects for your walls, nail pops. So you see here, these are the nails again, where they are fastening the drywall to the stud. They're supposed to basically mud over that and smooth it out. Sometimes they don't, or sometimes the nail, if they driving it too hard, the nail will pop out and you'll literally be able to see that in your wall. Obviously, moisture damage. So any sort of water stains, any signs of mold, if your ceilings are sagging, those could be indications of moisture damage. Structural issues, so cracks. Again, we don't go crack crazy, but cracks that are wider than how much?
1/2 inch.
Not half. That's too big.
An inch.
Nope. If half is too much, 1 inch is definitely too much.
1/8.
A fourth, a quarter of an inch. Okay, so at minimum, right? So if we see a crack that is a quarter of an inch or larger, so a quarter, a half, a whole inch and a half. If we see a crack a quarter of an inch or larger, that could be an indication of a structural issue. Or if we have again our cracks that run diagonal or they stair step, those are the ones that can indicate a structural issue. Okay. So again, your drywall itself is not the structure, but drywall will often reveal hidden issues. Again, remember behind the walls is concealed, so we can't see it. So it's technically outside of our scope. However, again, there will often be evidence with the drywall of certain issues. Plaster is basically the predecessor. This is our the way that we did it, a wall and ceiling finish that was used before the 50s. Okay. So if you're in older homes, like in my homes that are 100 years old, I often see this. When we start to tear the walls out, this is what we're going to see. Technically, in my opinion, this is a lot more durable than drywall. But if you have to repair it, it's a pain to repair. So plaster is set sort of like our stucco. So it's applied over a lath. Okay. So you can have a metal lath, which is again, kind of looks like, that metal with all of the different little holes in it, or you can have a wooden lath, which is what you see here. These are these thin wooden strips. Okay. And then the plaster is added over top of that, in pretty much on the same way that stucco is installed. Okay, so this is what you'll see in older homes. Drywall is what you will see most cases in newer homes. There's also the potential of wood as an interior finish. Again, in older homes, you could have your wood paneling for the entire wall, or if you have in a lot of homes, there will be wood applied to the lower half of the wall. That is called wainscoting. Okay. So these are just, again, planks, your wooden planks or panels that are installed. You would not want to see this in the garage. Okay. It's common in these like deck or den type of areas, but you don't want to see them in the garage. Okay. Next, we have interior trim. Just the same way as we have exterior trim, we have interior trim. What is the job of trim? What does it do on the outside?
Aesthetic,
Okay.
cosmetic,
Is and what else?
protects where the wall covering meets the floor or the ceiling.
That's correct. So that's what it does on the inside. So it's the same concept. Okay. It's trying, your trim is basically covering up a gap. Okay, be either between the wall and the floor, the wall and the ceiling, the wall and the door, the wall and the window is going to cover up the gap. And it sort of adds, again, that aesthetic to make the house look finished. Typically, your trim is going to be made of wood. In newer homes, they may use like some sort of composite materials, that fiberboard and different stuff like that. But typically, it's going to be wood. And your common trend types, first at the floor, we have our baseboard or our base molding. This runs along the bottom of the wall. And then above that, you have your quarter round or your shoe molding. This covers up the gap between the baseboard and the floor. So the baseboard is this piece here that is flush up against the wall. Well, there will still be a gap between the bottom of that wall and where the floor starts. The quarter round is the little piece that you add right there to trim to cover that up. Okay. Your chair rail, this is installed at the middle point of a wall. A lot of times you'll see these in dining rooms, right? At this middle point in the wall, you have your chair rail. And then your crown molding, probably heard that before. It's installed at the up at the top where the wall and the ceiling intersect so that we don't see that gap right there. It adds sort of a decorative finish. And then our casing is trim that surrounds our windows and our doors. Okay. So those are all of the trim. Now, in terms of like an inspection, you aren't going to have to go into a room and say it was base molding, it was quarter round molding. You're not going to have to say that. You're basically, if it's there and it is damaged, then you can call it out. Otherwise, you don't have to get into again naming them. This is the type of stuff that a client, they're not going to know what you're talking about when you say the quarter round was there and it was painted. Is going to be of no consequence to them. So you really are only going to have to get into mentioning it if there is damage, if there is um trim is typically added with caulk or some sort of fastening. So if it's falling apart, if it's hanging off or something like that, again, moisture issues, that would be where you would call that trim out. Our interior doors, same thing as our exterior doors. Um, what's the standard size for a door?
36 by 80.
So 80 inches tall, and then they come in widths of 2 increments. 36 is typically the most common. You can get solid wood doors. Again, these are likely found in older homes. These are the most durables. And then you have what they call a hollow core door, which are the cheaper doors that they got the frame with the filler in them, and they're a lot lighter and cheaper. You find these in newer homes. Doors could also be made of vinyl, fiberglass. You could have all of that material. In terms of, again, your actual inspection, you are going to be looking at the trim of the door, and for the interior, the fact that that you could actually close the door, and if there is a locking mechanism on the door. I never again use any of these terms in my report. The top rail, the style, like I never speak like that in my actual report. Okay? Any questions thus far?
I got a question. The door that goes to the garage from the interior, it said it has to be honeycomb on the inside. And would it be posted on the door?
Have to be what?
Honeycomb, steel door, honeycomb, or it has to be a solid wood door?
It has to be, most importantly, it has to be a self-closing door.
Right.
So, and what's your question? How would you report that if it's not?
How would you know that the steel door is like honeycomb in the inside?
I don't know what you mean by honeycomb. I'm drawing a blank. What is that?
It said something about it being a steel door with like I guess a honeycomb setting on the inside.
Oh, you talking about inside of the door, like how it's made?
Yeah.
Okay, you can't see that. It's outside your scope because you can't see that. For your interior doors, again, you're going to be looking basically, essentially, for visible damage. Is there a hole in the door? Is the handle missing? Will it shut? Is the trim off? That's what you're going to be looking for primarily with your interior doors. Anything else? All right, let's talk about our floors now. So our floor coverings are just the finishes that we install over our subfloor, which is another word for what?
Sheathing.
Which was what?
Sheathing.
Correct. Or decking. Okay. Most of our SOPs consider floor coverings, again, cosmetic and thus out of scope. But certain issues with the floor may suggest other issues, structural issues. So if you have your subfloor uneven or sloping, any gaps again at those baseboards, all of that could suggest that there's a larger issue. So it's still important to, again, put eyes on it, but you don't have to bog your report down with cosmetic issues that you find in the floor. For example, in your carpet, if I find a hole in the carpet, again, when I'm walking them through, I may point it out to them. If it's something likely, when you're during your inspection, you're doing the inspection after the person and their realtor has typically walked through the house 2 or 3 times. So if there's a hole in the carpet, chances are they've seen the hole. Okay. So I may point it out to them, but I'm not going to get bogged down with, again, cosmetic issues with the carpet. Our carpet, it comes in rolls, a roll of carpet, and you basically prepare your subfloor so that it's smooth. You want it to be dry and clean. You don't want damp subfloor. They lay a pad down beneath your carpet, and then they lay your carpet, and there are what we call tack strips that are nailed around the perimeter of the room that basically serve as a grip for the backing of the carpet, and that's how it attaches. And then we have at your doorways or where your carpet is going to meet another flooring type, we have what we call transition strips, okay, for our carpet. Next, we've got laminate flooring. So when you are inspecting, you do want to call out the type of floor. So you walk into the living room or the dining room, you want to be able to say that the floor covering material was laminate or vinyl or whatever the case may be. So laminate is basically a fake composite, a synthetic, however you want to call it, floor covering that's um, designed to look like either wood or stone or tile. These boards here basically have multiple layers. The first layer here is a backing layer, and that's what gives the floor sort of like its stability, and it resists the moisture that could be coming up. Then there's a core layer, and then there's what we call a design layer. This is the layer that gives it the image of wood, tile, or stone, or whatever the case may be. And then on the top, it is covered with a wear layer. And this is the protective surface to obviously try to reduce damage from, walking on it and wear. Um, these floors are very common in rentals, right? And rental properties where there's going to be a lot of high traffic and different things like that. You'll see a lot of laminate floor. These are typically installed in planks. I don't know if you can see here, but there's this like tongue and groove situation to where they almost like click and lock into place. The boards do. So when you're inspecting it, are you seeing any buckling of the boards? Again, that could be from moisture, if the boards are separating, if there's too large of a gap, if the planks are loose, all of that kind of stuff is what you are going to be looking for. Next, we've got vinyl. Excuse me. These are also common in rentals because they are durable. Okay, and you can have a lot of different types of flooring that are made, because remember, vinyl is the material. Okay. Um Typically vinyl is gonna be made from like a lot of like plastic, like PVC and other materials, and they also have a backing on the back of them. These floors are water resistant, and so you can see these a lot of times in kitchens and also in bathrooms. You can get them in all different types of look, as you can see here. If you want it to look like wood, if you want it to look like tile, they even have the little squares that you can actually peel and stick. So vinyl can come in all of these different, basically, styles um, for you. Issues with vinyl, the cheap stuff, after a while, you can start to see dents in it. It'll even maybe tear and sometimes even like curl up around the edges. So those are different types of defects that you can look for. Again, don't be thrown off because you could see vinyl that comes in a big long sheet, and it could be installed like that. You could see vinyl flooring installed as peel and stick. You could see vinyl planks installed with that same click lock sort of installation. It doesn't matter, what style it is, the material is still vinyl. Okay. Next, we've got tile and also stone. So these are your rigid and very durable coverings. You find these in your kitchens, bathrooms. This can also, you can have these on the wall too. You can have tile that go up your wall a lot of times in the bathroom. So the difference between tile and stone. So basically, essentially, tile is man-made, stone is natural. Okay. Tile is a manufactured material, usually clay, and there are different types. So it comes in the same size, shape, and thickness. You can get it to be smooth. You can get it to have a water resistant finish, and it can also, again, you can get it printed or imaged so that it would mimic a wood or a stone or some sort of decorative texture. Tile is more expensive than these other floor covering materials, but less expensive than actual stone because again, stone is naturally occurring. So ceramic tile is probably the most common type of tile. Okay. Again, it can look like whatever you want it to look like. So excuse me, it's very easy to make it fit in. You got porcelain tile, you could have glass tile. So there are a ton of different types. Again, just don't confuse it with your stone, which is not natural. So your stone is your marble, your granite, your slate. All of those are stone. Okay. And again, you can see this in a bathroom is nothing to go in, and the whole bathroom is tiled, the floor and the walls, or at least a portion of the walls, typically where the bathtub is. Any questions on the floor coverings? All right, your stairs. Same concept um as we learned about with our deck stairs is literally the same concept. So we have our stair stringer. So even on the interior, the structural component that the stairs are built on is the stringer. We still have our risers. We still have our the nosing, the lip that goes over the tread. We still have our landing requirement. What's the size of the landing requirement?
36 inches.
36 by 36. That's correct. The maximum riser height,
7 3/4
inches.
correct. Minimum tread depth,
10 feet, 10 inches.
10
10
inches.
inches. That's correct. Okay, so that applies when you are doing your interior stairs as well. For the width of your stairway, it needs to be at least 36 inches wide. So this is talking about the entire stairway. Okay. And then headroom, what we call, um, you measure this vertically. So you need 80 inches of headroom for your steps. Okay. Same provision in terms of your handrails and all of that kind of stuff. One thing that I noticed a lot with interior steps is that difference. What's the difference? The maximum difference between the risers in inches?
3/8.
3/8 of an inch. I very commonly see that the stairs are not uniform. You're walking up a step and then you got to take a step up to get to that next step. And it don't matter if they cover it with carpet or, whatever the case may be, that is still a defect. Also, here in Cleveland, again, we have a lot of basements. So, very often, our basement steps are too narrow. They don't have any headroom space. You got to crouch down to try to get down them. They may or may not have a handrail. So these are all things that you want to be mindful of when you're looking at your stairs, your stairways from one level to the next, and also if you're in an area that has basements. In the book, it gives you there's a certain shape your handrails basically have to be in order to provide to give you grip and support. So again, your handrails are required when there are 4 or more risers. The handrail should be how many inches above your tread at a minimum?
36.
I'll take 36. At a minimum, it's 30. So it's 34 to 38 inches above the tread. So the minimum would be 34. Okay. And one thing about your handrails, these are also a very common defect. They're typically always loose. Handrails are supposed to be anchored into the framing of the house. Again, your vertical studs. Quite too often, they are just nailed into the drywall. So over time, with people grabbing them, they get loose. Okay. So that's one thing that you always want to check is your handrail. And if it's loose, that is a reportable defect because that is affecting the safety and the functionality. The handrail is there to give you support. And if it's loose, it won't be of any support. Okay. So if there's no handrail there when it's required, if it's too high or too low, it needs to be continuous and not have any breaks or gaps. If it's not graspable here, if it's not graspable, then these are all reportable defects. Okay. And then our cabinets. I mean, obviously, we all know what cabinets are. Your storage boxes basically in the kitchen. I do typically inspect the cabinets that are in the kitchen, generally made of wood or plywood. Some sort of particle board is going to be the material for your cabinets, and the cabinets are basically just named by where they go. So the cabinets that are hung above your countertops, those are wall cabinets because we hang them on the wall. The base cabinets rest on the floor. Your cabinet where you have your sink at, that is called a sink base. The cabinets where you can pull out the drawers, those are called drawer bases. Okay, so the cabinets are again just named based upon where they go in the house. In terms of your inspection, you're basically just making sure that all of the doors work, they will open, they will shut. Sometimes people install them offline to where they overlap. You wouldn't be able to open up the door. Sometimes people don't screw in the handles. These are all things that you're checking out for. In that sink based cabinet, so in the kitchen, just say this is where the sink was. If you look up under here 9 out of 10 times, you're going to see signs of moisture, which you're going to call out because you probably have a leak somewhere, either active or passive. Any questions? No mas?
I had a question.
Uh-huh.
With the like guardrails or handrails, the book talked about balusters, and it was also one of our questions. Um, would we measure the space between them to make sure that they're spaced properly,
What's
like 4 inches or 6 inches? Like, do as home inspectors, that's within our scope. Cause
yeah.
I'm gonna go back and read, but I thought the book said it wasn't. But
They shouldn't be spaced so that a 4-inch sphere could pass through. And what's gonna happen is some of this stuff is gonna be like you're just gonna see it, right? It's like you're gonna see those balusters in the middle of the guard, and you're gonna see these are all spaced like this, and then there's one that has this amount of space. That's gonna be your cue to then measure it and see if it measures. Same thing with the step, right? You're gonna see that each step steps up, and then there's this huge gap, or is this not? You're gonna see those things, and then that's gonna be your indication to basically verify with your tools, in that case, a tape measure.
in all handrails or guardrails must have balusters, or is it some that they're not required?
No, I'm pretty sure they're always required. There are different types. I think you asked about that even before, like with the
Okay.
modern um They're like the post tension cables, the modern. So those are still in a way serving the same sort of purpose. It's a safety thing because you don't want, if that space is open, the thought is somebody could, fall through.
Okay. Oh, and I asked because that house that we looked at the last class in the basement part, it did look like it had those, so I didn't know if that was required. That's the reason why I asked this time.
I don't remember exactly which picture, but it was likely a defect because there was nothing in that space, which means that it
Mhm.
was wide open. Again, somebody could step through and fall. Any other questions? All right. Last thing, next week we are getting into our report writing. We use, or I use, the platform. Let me stop this. I use the, hold up, hold your line.